This is the oldest and one of the biggest metro systems in the world, and some of it is really very old. Some of it's nearly 150 years old. My predecessors, up until the 70s, did invest quite a lot of money into the system, but the recent history is that every new line that's been built has accompanied virtual freeze on money spent everywhere else in the system. So the Victoria line was built in the 60s, the Jubilee line was built in the 80s, more recently we had the failed PPP, and every time something of that magnitude has occurred, investment in everything else has virtually stopped. So it's really been completely stop-start, and the consequence is that we're now running not just some old trains, we're running the oldest metro trains in the world on the Metropolitan line. They're 50 years old and they just won't last much longer. The trains on the District line, which people think of as fairly new, are a mere 34 years old. The trains on the Piccadilly line first entered service when I started with London Transport 35 years ago, and these things are worn out and they have to be replaced. The fact is that a lot of it's got to be replaced together. Virtually all the signalling systems are worn out, ancient things being held together in some cases by sellotape and bits of string and parts acquired from eBay. And in the end, that's no good for you for a modern railway. So the programme that we've got for the line upgrades is designed to get rid of a vast collection of out-of-date technology and replace it by stuff which is up to date and also gives more capacity. The real success of the mayoral system for transport in London has been the establishment of a decent long-term funding stream to, well, principally increase capacity and renew the tube. We got a multi-year settlement out of the previous government with the previous mayor to 1718. Now you'd expect in times of public economy that you wouldn't get through unscathed, and we haven't. The present spending review is a shorter period of time to 14-15, and we have lost some money in the consequence compared with the previous spending settlement. However, we have managed to preserve the money for the line upgrades for the tube in a way that I think many people thought wasn't possible. That's a great credit to this mayor, and it's also a great credit to the business community who have supported our case for doing the line upgrades and increasing capacity. What it means in practical terms is that the line upgrades we previously planned will all go ahead, albeit that some of them will be on a different timescale, which is not financially driven, it's actually driven by the practicality of delivering them. There are a number of milestones. One of the milestones will be early next year when the Jubilee line is finally finished after great batches of weekend closures. Another is in the middle of 2012 when the Victoria line will be finished. At the end of 2015-16, the entire subsurface fleet, Metropolitan Circle, Hammersmith City and District, will be new air-conditioned trains, and sometime shortly after that the signalling will be finished so that you can run more trains on those lines. 2018 is a very significant year because that's the year that Crossrail will open, and that will add 10% to the capacity overnight. And I think the other thing worth saying about all of that is we don't intend to do future upgrades by huge numbers of weekend closures. There will be some weekend closures because that's the only way you can renew the track, but we intend to do future signalling replacement by installing parallel systems and then taking the others out. So I hope that we've seen the end of the huge closure programmes which have blighted the Jubilee line. In that sense, Londoners ought to see an improvement next year sometime. So London's continuing to grow, and as long as it continues to grow, it will need more transport. It's not growing at the rate of a place like Shanghai, which is currently building a metro system as big as ours at once, but it is growing and it will require more improvement beyond Crossrail. We've looked at Chelsea Hackney or Crossrail 2, and we're continuing to look at it. Certainly if the high-speed rail line is built to Euston, there'll have to be something done at Euston, otherwise people will arrive there but they won't be able to get into the tube at all because there just won't be enough room. One of the questions for the future of London is how does it grow and where does it grow? And those are really interesting questions because the higher the density of living and working, the more useful it is to provide public transport because public transport thrives on density. Equally, if you can develop the city in a different way, then if people can live close to where they work and where they go to school and where their health facilities are, then you can expect to see more walking and cycling. I think the other big question about is what the future of the car is in a post-carbon world, because people still are looking for personal mobility. It's not always the case that public transport it solves everybody's needs. People who do multiple journeys, dropping kids off, going shopping, going to work as well, still look for personal mobility. They're questions which aren't easily answered, and actually the truth of it is that the transport needs of the city will be determined by how many people live there and what the land use pattern is that emerges. Those are questions which the Mayor seeks to answer in the London plan, and they're also questions which are a great deal of debate in cities across the world. If you live in Croydon and your job is in Stockley Park near Heathrow Airport, you must drive. There's no effective way of providing public transport for that journey. If the city becomes hugely dense to the extent to which public transport can be effectively managed to cater for a big increase in journeys, then it will be more public transport dominated. If it develops so that local centres provide more employment, then walking and cycling you can expect to increase. It is all to do with the way in which the land use pattern develops. Transport is a consequence of land use and population. It can also drive it, as it did in the 1930s, but I suspect in the next 2 decades it will be as a consequence of how the city develops.